Go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this lovely Saturday, November 27th at 12:01 p.m. We are live, it looks like, all over the province or from wherever you're watching from. I'll introduce myself. I'm Chantel. I am on the board of directors for BC Access. I am a white woman with very pale skin. I'm wearing glasses. I have blonde hair with a big blonde bang on the side. I've got really cool Stormtrooper headphones on with a mic in the front. And I have a floral background here so that you don't see my washing machine as we talk and get distracted by that. I'm also wearing a gray t-shirt, and it's my very special shirt, and it says, "Hello, my name is That Parent." It's one that we had created last year for our conference, and we also have some more this year as well. I am speaking to you from the unceded, stolen territory of the Nanaimo First Nation. I moved here about 2 years ago, and I'm getting to know this place a lot more. COVID kind of hit right as we moved, so it's been harder to get out and about and start to learn about where it is that I'm coming from, or where that I've landed now in my life. And I have learned recently from Elder Florence James that I am in the shadow of the mountain of Taktalan, and it is the grandmother of mountains in this area, which means a lot to me because my grandmother was hugely pivotal in my life. She helped raise us and helped me become the firecracker that I am today. And so I give thanks to being here. I am extremely grateful to be here. This land is extremely was taken care of before we arrived as colonizers, and I'm really hoping that we can get back to that, because this is something that we absolutely have to do in our environment, but also in the education system as well, that we brought over and has been harming and hurting very much the Indigenous population, our First Nations that were here before, the people that were here before, and they're here now, and we're still continuing to harm them with these colonial systems. And so hoping to be able to help take those systems down and make a better world for all of us. And I am a mom of two kids with disabilities. I myself have ADHD. That's why I ramble a lot and go off onto tangents. It's hard to keep me focused into one place sometimes, especially when I'm nervous. And I'm not going to really apologize for that, because right now I'm going to own it. I think that I'm getting to the place now where I'm owning who I am, and this new diagnosis that I've come to know about myself. I just found out this summer. I went for an assessment. We're talking about assessments today. So I thought I'd lead with that. And we've been through many with my kids, and I had to go through one this year myself. And it was very interesting how long it took me to actually go and get that assessment, even though I knew deep down inside what it was. So it was really interesting why I waited so long to do this just for myself. And I know that a lot of adults nowadays are going through this journey as well. And I welcome you all to join us and talk with us, and put your questions in the chat box and stuff like that to go and talk about assessments. What we're going to be talking primarily today, though, is assessments in the education system, from K to 12 sort of thing. But as you can see, like, if that doesn't happen, you get it at 45 and you realize, wow, things could have been so different in my younger years. But we're going to start off with Cathy McMillan, who some of you already maybe know, and you should know. Actually, she's somebody you really should be following. She is Dyslexia BC, and she is an amazing person who I've known for a few years now, and I'm very, very lucky to say is a friend and co-conspirator in tearing these systems down and rebuilding into something that works for everyone and honors honors the human rights of everybody. So Cathy, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us a bit more.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction, Chantal. And yeah, I think we've known each other for probably almost 8 years now. And I usually start off by saying my name is Cathy McMillan and I am dyslexic. I'm here today, obviously, to talk about assessments. And I just learned something new from Chantal about describing who I am visually as well. To most of the people I usually present to have dyslexia, and they are very visual people, and they take that in as opposed to written language. So I am a white woman with pale skin and freckles, and I'm wearing a blue sweater and I have brown colored hair. I'm over 50, so it probably should be a lot whiter than it is. I have not been diagnosed with dyslexia, but both of my children, who are now adults, 20 and 23, were diagnosed at various stages in their lives, and it is a genetic condition. So when I look back at the struggles that I had in school, most definitely I am dyslexic. And back in the day, you just didn't diagnose, and it was all hush hush that, oh, Cathy has dyslexia. Even though my mom said it a few times, it was not properly acknowledged. And when I look at my kids who are both on the dean's list, my son graduated from UBC on the honor roll. Yeah, my life could have been a little bit different if I struggled through school with the reading and writing aspects. And I made it through. I have a BSc, but I tended to go for the math and sciences because I didn't have to write as much. So there you go. I'm coming like Chantal from a personal aspect, but along the way, I've had to advocate quite a lot for my kids as well as myself. And unfortunately, it is a lot easier with a diagnosis, and that comes from assessment. I would also like to acknowledge today the traditional territory and honor the ancestors and all relations who walked this land long before we were gathered here today. I would like to acknowledge with gratitude this beautiful place where we live, work, and play, the Coast Salish nations, all my relations. I'm in Port Moody, so I'm pretty close to the water, and I've looked it up, and apparently other like the Squamish Nation would come down and do their hunting here, and visit sort of in the summer months. So there were a lot of transient actions going on in this area because of the closeness to the ocean and the wildlife, and they do hunting and all kinds of things. So thank you for being here today. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be coming at it a little bit from the personal perspective. But there is a lot of confusion when people say you need a diagnosis. For any type of learning disability, and the learning disabilities include dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and dyspraxia, which is movement. To assess learning disabilities, you do a psychoeducational assessment, and we're talking full assessment, like full diagnosis. And in BC, those are done with the DSM-5 in mind. That's the newest manual from the Medical Association. It's called the DSM-5. But the two factors influencing a diagnosis in BC are the DSM-5 as well as the Ministry of Education. So they do have a little bit of a hand in assessments, and they give out information to psychologists and tell them how they want these assessments to look.
Sorry, Kathy,
Go
I
ahead.
want to jump in there real quick because you said that, and it made me remember something that I learned reading the old policy manual. It's old, okay? It's still there. It's still current,
Yeah.
but it's old. It's actually referencing the DSM-4.
Okay. Yep. But
So how you can see how problematic that would be, because if you want to tell our viewers what the difference was between the DSM-4 and the DSM-5 when it came to learning disabilities.
there is a big difference. Well, especially in terms of learning disabilities. Um, the categories are different. But going back to what you said before, like they are using the DSM-5 now, or at least all the psychologists have got a notice from the ministry saying DSM-5. And if they haven't used the DSM-5, as an advocate, you can say to them, this isn't right. You need to be using the DSM-5. So as a parent advocate, you need to know more than anybody about your own kid and your own situation. And that's why having a proper diagnosis is so important. Um, and I am coming from a personal view. I do know my kids went to some tutors when they were younger, and there was two twin boys that would get tutored, and they both had autism. They were on the autism spectrum. And I knew the family quite well. They didn't tell their boys they had autism, and they were graduating. And I've always been like, I think because I struggled and I realized myself that if I had a diagnosis, I would have been able to say, hey, can I get those notes to the disability department? Whereas I had to go around and make sure that I felt comfortable asking one of my classmates, hey, I have trouble writing notes because the way I process, I couldn't describe I have dyslexia. That would have been so much easier.
Right.
So I found a way around it. I got notes in every one of my classes in university, but I kind of owned what I knew my not so good strengths were, if that, my faults. I kind of owned my faults, and that took probably a lot of strength on my part, but also my parents, their parenting style and how they address things. So whatever my weak areas were, they helped me figure out a way to solve problems. And a little bit of dyslexic people tend to have a personality where they are problem solvers. It's a bit of a trait. So I think I come by it honestly. So anyways, back to this assessment thing. The two things governing it in BC are the BC Ministry of Ed and the DSM-5. So there's lots of so Chantal, you did ask a question. I apologize. So
No, you answered it. You answered it quite
okay.
well. Yes, but if
Okay.
it rolls into what you're going to say, sorry, I jumped in there,
so
and
the DSM-4 broke down learning disabilities into the categories: reading, which is dyslexia; writing, which is dysgraphia; and dyscalculia, which is the math; and dyspraxia, which is now developmental
developmental coordination disorder. It's actually the other way around with dyspraxia, though. Like dyspraxia, from what I've learned, because both my kids have it, is in North America we use just developmental coordination disorder, but I think in Europe they sort of use dyspraxia a lot more as a term than what we use here. Because I've used the term dyspraxia here, and people are like, "What? I don't understand what you're talking about." So I just go to DCD now, the developmental coordination disorder.
Yeah, and when we tend to talk about learning disabilities, we do just say the three, but you can throw dyspraxia into there as well. And a lot of school districts will say to you, that you can't use the term dyslexia. It's
Mhm.
actually referenced in the DSM-5
Mhm.
as a term that can be used to describe the nature in which the specific learning disability presents.
That's right. Yeah.
So you can copy the DSM-5 and give that to the district if you want to do that fight, but I don't do that fight. My
Yeah.
kids actually, their psych eds say dyslexia. If anybody says learning disability, I don't get mad at them. I just say dyslexia right back at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so there's my little spiel about whether you should say dyslexia. If you feel more comfortable saying learning disability, but for my daughter who has severe dyslexia, she doesn't want to go up to the teacher, excuse me, I have a learning disability in reading and a little bit in writing and a little bit, it's just much easier. I have dyslexia. I need my notes. I need this. I need that. It's so much
Right.
easier to advocate.
Can I like go off on a little tangent with you on this?
Sure, sure.
Because I think it really comes to the core of assessments, and when families decide that they want to bring their kids for an assessment, right? Because some of
Yep,
us are like gung ho, right? Like,
yep,
okay, we're just gonna go for it. We're gonna do this. It's gonna be, we need to get this done, right? But then
right.
there are a lot of families that are very nervous and uncomfortable with it because they don't want to label their child. And you talked to
Exactly.
this earlier about how some families don't even tell their child what their
Oh yeah.
diagnosis is for a
So
while because they're uncomfortable with it or they don't want
exactly.
to, but the child's already, people need to understand the child's already labeled,
Yeah,
but it's usually a very negative term, and I'm not going to say any of these terms because it is what it is, but we need to,
yeah,
if we have the label, we know what it is that we're focusing on. We know a bit about how the brain is kind of working here because no two people are alike there, but
yeah, yeah.
the basis is kind of the same. And I think that's a point we need to make to our viewers is that assessments don't mean a lifelong sentence of
No,
horrible shame or anything like that.
no.
We're here to own it. We're here to own our labels and there are identities of who we are. Some folks don't agree with that, and that's totally fine as well.
Yeah.
But my ADHD does define me now. I've realized that, and it's been with me all my life. I just also want to clarify too, is that DCD or dyspraxia is not under the label of learning disabilities with the school system.
Yeah.
So as a designation, you will not get a designation if you have a diagnosis of developmental coordination anymore. Before in the past, you used to get a chronic health designation. Unfortunately, that was phased out quietly. I found out.
Really?
Yep, it was phased out in my son was in grade 3, and he finally got the diagnosis, and that's when they phased it out. And so we didn't get any designation for that.
Wow.
Anyways, anywho,
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
political side to it all. So,
yeah. Well,
in
it's how
some,
districts interpret
and
the policy manual. Because if you look at it, chronic health designation isn't tied to a diagnosis. They interpret the language to mean, well, you have to be very, very physically disabled to get that chronic health designation. It's like, well, so they are. That's what that is. But now you have to prove that you're disabled enough to even get that. So that was a side note, and I wanted to clarify for our listeners here in
well,
regards.
sometimes I do recommend if you can get a private assessment because, and I know a lot of people, most people probably can't afford them, especially if they don't have extended medical, because that psychologist is working for you and not the school district. So
Yeah.
they're going to put your kid in to a category any which way, right? So
Well, sorry, I just want to clarify though, developmental coordination disorder, you can't, it's not a psych ed that gives you that diagnosis. It's actually an occupational therapist in conjunction with a developmental pediatrician or a
okay,
pediatrician that will give that diagnosis. I know because we've had many of those assessments. I'll get into
okay,
that when I get into my story.
yeah. Well, that's you're bringing up something I wanted to talk about anyway.
Okay.
I think that all assessment like full-blown diagnosis assessment needs to be done outside of the education system and put in with the medical system so that we are all getting medical diagnosis, because these conditions, what you got your diagnosis at 45, they're lifelong, and they are medical diagnosis. Like the DSM-5 is a medical manual. You know, enough with the like giving education a certain amount of money and learning disabilities is only an educational problem. It carries on for life, especially for the people that don't get diagnosis. And then also what happens in the work field or the workforce or whatever, like, oh, didn't you get over that in school? You know, like that literally people think you get out of the education system and there's no more problems. And I hear dyslexia advocates, especially the ones in Ontario right now, saying, oh, it's just a problem in school. It's this group that says that dyslexia or learning disability. I tend to say dyslexia a lot. I'm not sure if you know, but 80 to 90% of all learning disabilities are dyslexia. And so when I say that, I mean learning disabilities in general. So please don't take that the wrong way. That's just who I am. And I can say that safely around here because everybody is a dyslexic in my house. So my husband tries to say that he is not, but when computers first came out, and we've been married for 26 years, and he sent me his first like email, which was kind of a little bit of a love letter. It said, "Hey, sweaty," instead of "Hey, sweetie." And even though I'm dyslexic, I interpreted it sweetie, and he spelt it wrong. So anyway, there you go. So I think assessments should be put into the medical system, but most parents think that you do need a full-blown assessment, but within the education system, they are perfectly capable of screening. They can screen for math, they can screen for reading, they can screen for free. They have free assessments. Just the one called the Dibbles is free. You can get it offline or online and download it and use it for free. So the resource teacher, it's a difference between a level B and the like psych ed assessment is a level C test. So you have to be you have to be qualified to give those assessments. But the level B, most teachers can be trained to give, and like the KT, Dibbles, a DRA, there's another one. Anyways, the old manual has a list of all the level B assessments that can be done in a school and take about 5 minutes. Personally, and most people that advocate for learning disabilities, and I mean, the International Dyslexia Association, all say that kids need to be screened in kindergarten for reading, writing, and math issues.
Yep,
and
exactly.
To get the best results from a remedial point, that's what needs to happen. And so if you think your son or daughter is struggling, and they're, you know, we're not giving them assessment, we're not till grade 3 or 4, whatever whatever line they give you, you can say, well, can you please give them a screener? And go in there and tell them, you know, that they have the KT, which every resource teacher in BC has. You know that they can do a Dibbles. If you know the names of these screeners and you say, well, can you do this? Once you start showing them that you know your stuff, they can't argue with you. And oh, sure, okay, I'll do a KT. And look at the numbers. When you see that 10th percentile and they say, oh, well, you know, there's people that are worse off than she is, you say to them, really? So she's in the 10th percentile and 90% of her peers are doing better than she is, and you say she's okay? I don't think so. Can I talk to the district staff about this KT that says, so there's levels in advocacy. You always start with the resource teacher or whoever's telling you, you know, this is it, this is final, she's okay at 10th percentile. Then the next person you talk to is the school principal. He's ultimately responsible for the IEPs. What I'm nervous about is that they're going to get rid of the IEPs fairly soon, because in my opinion, they've kind of watered them down a little bit lately, particularly from a learning disability standpoint. You need to know what level your child is. You can't just function on their strengths. Like my daughter can run. She could in grade 1 beat all the boys in her class. They could put that on her IEP as a strength, but would that help her read? You know, like we needed to know that she was in the 10th percentile for reading in grade 1. By the way, by the time she hit grade 4, she was in the first or 0.5 percentile for reading, even with like being in a private school, having intervention like you wouldn't believe. They could have diagnosed her in grade 1. The psychologist told me she was very dyslexic, but he didn't want to label her just yet. So what happened when I went back to the school with a psychologist report saying suspected dyslexia, like that's all he wrote, that she needed as much help with reading and writing as possible, the school said, she's not that bad. She doesn't need an IEP. And if I had $1 for every time a PhD told me that a kid needed an IEP, I'd be rich. So the public school system didn't give my child an IEP till she was in grade 4. And they didn't give her one until I paid for a second psych ed that put her in the 1st percentile. So that's what it took. They wanted to see her hit rock bottom before they were going to give her any help. So if I knew back then what I know now, I may have been able to push a little bit harder to get help. But I did push them. Chantel knows me well enough that I did push them all the way to the superintendent by the time she was finished grade 1. And she did get quite a bit of help based on what I did, but it still wasn't enough. Like I had to give her outside help, tutors. She had a tutor. She spent about half her school career in the public system and half in the private system. But in both situations, I had to get extra help, even in the private system. So what I'm saying in British Columbia, for someone who has a severe learning disability, there is no perfect situation.
And we know that with Rick Moore, right?
Oh yeah.
With what happened with his son. That's a really, really, really important case that everybody should know about is the Rick Moore case. That I think everybody who's having issues or trying to advocate for their child in the school system needs to look that case up. And I think that it's a case that we need to remind all the districts about. That was a loss or a court case that he won. And they're supposed to be following that now, but they don't. So yeah, and I know this because it's interesting. I've known Cathy since for a long time, right? My journey started like over a decade ago with my eldest. But I won't get into that, Cathy, until you are finished with your journey through all this.
Well, it has to do with assessments. So my youngest, who's 20, has had her 5th assessment. And even post-secondary, each new school wants a new assessment. So, you know, because of COVID, my daughter was in Virginia, and then she came back because of COVID, and she's now at the University of Victoria. And we thought we were done with assessments, and no, for her to get her accommodations, she needed another $3,000 assessment to go to UVic.
To see if she was cured of her dyslexia. Is that what that was about?
They just needed a more recent assessment. Yeah.
Because to me, that speaks to the idea that, are they cured? Like, did they just somehow grow out of their disability? And I'll speak to that because
Yeah.
that's happening with my kids and stuff like that, which I find really, really interesting. But that's what it sounds like to me. Is
A
I
little
need to
bit
prove it
that
again.
way. And everybody says it gets easier in college. And I think some of the colleges are easier, but UVic is not. So you need to be prepared for the worst. And um, because of my advocacy, I know a lot. So I know that my daughter, along with learning disabilities, is usually a memory impairment. So whether it's working memory, usually it's working memory, especially in the beginning when they're overwhelmed with their disability. So, their working memory is that memory that you need in the moment for remembering, regurgitating data that you just learned, and some days kids with learning disabilities will get it, and it depends on what's going on in their day. If they got in trouble at school because they pulled the girl's hair in front of them or whatever they did, they might go to their reading lesson, and be distracted. So they're not going to remember anything because all they can remember is getting in trouble and sitting in the office for 2 hours or whatever it was that happened, right? So as they go further along in their remediation process and their reading gets a little bit better, or they get more accommodations, their working memory might increase. That's what happened to my kid. I think she's now in the 30th percentile for working memory, like close to average. Like average is really low. And that's something you guys need to remember as well when you're advocating. So if they go up 2%, they might still be considerably low, but they might just pop into the average. Like, I don't know, I think 8th percentile is average, like low average or something like that. So when the school goes, oh, look, she's average, it's like, no, she's not. So, and you need to look at those numbers and give me a call if you want, or and just hit on that disability button everything you say. Um, that is your most valuable advocacy tool. Um,
Thank you, Cathy. Yeah,
yeah,
it's very
exactly.
good words. Very good words, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So once I realized her working memory started coming up, and your kids will as well, the more help you give them, because it eases the brain into, being able to function like everyone else does. But her memory was still bad in certain instances. So the last psych ed, I said, no, you know what? Because she was average for her working memory. I said, there's still other memory that's, I know, because she forgets her lunch, she forgets this. And as parents, you know what your kids do and don't do compared to other kids, right? So they did another memory test, and she came out in the 3rd percentile for visual memory. So she was actually labeled as having a visual memory disability on her psych ed, which has been helpful for her getting her accommodations. Just last week, I looked at another kid's psych ed, and it was done by it was a private psych ed. The parents paid a lot of money for it. But all it said was that she qualified for dyscalculia, and her working memory was in the 4th percentile, but it didn't say that she had a memory disability. So, and she was having trouble at UVic getting accommodations for her memory, like the time, extra time and all that kind of stuff. So I said, you need to go back to the psychologist, and he needs to diagnose her as having a memory disability and this and that and the other thing. It can't stand alone with the dyscalculia, because the person behind the counter in the disability department is just a clerk, just like the CRA. They're just reading for what it says on the last line. They're not reading the numbers. And as a parent, you need to go through those numbers and say, hey, that's really low. Really, you don't want to diagnose them with something. And you know what? The kid doesn't have to go around and tell everybody, oh, I've got a memory disorder, I've got this disorder. Like, unless they really want to. It's your data, you keep it, right? So these
That's right.
other parents that don't want to tell their kids, um, it's a personal tool so that you can grow,
That's
what
right.
can I do to
Exactly.
fix this memory part, and you don't have to disclose to everybody in the world. Nobody has to know. Yeah.
So we have a couple of comments and some
Yeah.
questions and things like that.
Sure.
And I'd like to get into different kinds of assessments too in a
Yeah.
moment. Someone talked about developmental language disorder is also neurodevelopmental, like dyslexia or ADHD. I've never heard of developmental language disorder. Is that like an old term? Um,
No, yes, it's another way of saying learning disability.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've not
Autistic
heard that
learning.
before. My
Yeah.
youngest has learning disability as well. And I've never heard that term before. So I find that interesting. They say research shows 68% of kids with dyslexia also have DLD. There's
Yeah.
also chronic health. There's still chronic health, but it has to be auditable, usually a physical disability. Developmental coordination and disorder is actually a physical disability, but we don't take it as seriously because they can walk.
Yeah.
Um, but what is very misunderstood is what exactly it means. It means your brain is not sending the proper signals to your body. And so fine and gross motor skills are extremely delayed. Brushing teeth, picking up a fork, feeding yourself, putting on clothes, tying up your buttons, or doing the buttons up on your clothes. They're the kids that are very, very clumsy. My kid used to run into walls, like literally run into walls. And I thought, wow, that's very different. I've never seen that before. And like literally trip over nothing, over air. My kids trip as they walk up the stairs. I've never seen that before, but my kids do it all the time. Um, Actually, it's a rule in the house now. They're not allowed to run in the house because I know they're kind of just like, um, and we've also been asked to go over the basics of a psych ed. So if you don't mind, Cathy, I can share a little bit about my older son's journey of a psych ed and what that entailed when we first started on our journey, and the many other we had another psych ed for my youngest, and now I have to go get more for my oldest, and it's a good time. Our journey started at 3.5 years old. We knew something was happening there. His speech was extremely delayed. I was getting a lot of, well, boys, I'm sure you've heard this, Cathy. Oh, boys develop later. They speak later. They do these things later. Writing, reading, all of this stuff. They claim that boys do it later, and I don't. There's nothing to back that up, but doctors say that a lot. And so our people kept saying that, and then my sister, who is basically kind of like an EA on the East Coast in Quebec, she was like, no, I think you really need to go get him assessed. And so we started off with a pediatrician. So when people say, hey, you should go get your kid assessed, what do you think of first? You think, oh, I'll go to the doctor. That's not who you go to, though.
Yeah.
So you have to go to your doctor. Yeah, you have to go to your doctor first. This is what a lot of folks do first, and this is what I do tell people first too, as well, is whatever doctor you have, or go on Babylon Health, get an appointment to a pediatrician. Now that could be over a year-long wait now to see a pediatrician. I know it is here, and then you want to, at the same time, book an appointment for a psych ed assessment with a psychologist, because that is also now a long wait list. At the time when we had done ours, we went to the pediatrician. She's like, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure he has ADHD, but you probably want to do a psych ed as well. And so I booked that appointment just before he started kindergarten. And I told the kindergarten, I said, preschool was really difficult. We're going to go get an assessment in December. This is what I think we're going to need for him, and stuff like that. And the school's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's just going to do what he's going to do, and we'll do something. And I'm like, so you don't have a plan? And they're like, no, not really. I'm like, great. So it didn't go well. It ended very, very badly. And it was very frustrating because when I walked in there and told them about, what the challenges we were facing and stuff, I figured school is going to help us. Like, why wouldn't you help children coming into the school system? I warned you. I talked with you. I'm collaborating with you. And they're like, no, we're just going to do what we're going to do, which was actually traumatizing to my child. He can, for many, many years afterwards, he was never going to be the last person in the lineup, because that was extremely hard for him and traumatic, because the teacher would do that to him and put him in the back of the line. And he would act out because the kids would tease him or bug him because they knew he had a really short fuse, and he'd get into more trouble, and it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. And at the time, we were finally getting the assessment with the psychologist in the spring, and she wrote a letter to the teacher saying, please don't do that anymore. That's very traumatizing for him. He's getting, kind of bullied for it and stuff like that. Why don't you have him at the beginning of the line so he's in your line of sight and you can help him out? And they're like, no, we're just going to do what we want to do, and continued on with that. It was really a bad year, like a very, very bad year. The school actually said that they would kick us out. And I learned after that you can't do that, but that's what they were going to do. And I'm like, that's very strange. So we started our psych ed assessment with Dr. Bonnie Gillis in Surrey, and she is an amazing ADHD psychologist who is just absolutely wonderful, beautiful person. And what it is that it's a long process. Like, you have to at least book like 3 hours, and it maybe what we did was we did 1 hour chunks with my son, because he has ADHD and he's not going to sit down, and he was very hard to get there to actually do the assessment. And that's another stumbling block for a lot of parents, is actually getting their child to be able to do the assessment, to get a proper read on what is going on. But she was extremely good, and we were extremely lucky and privileged to be able to pay for a psych ed privately, and it cost about $3,000 to get that done over a period of time. And at the end of it, the kids did their part, and then we have an intake where we talk about what they were like growing up, like what your pregnancy was like, what your the developmental stages were like. It's a good hour and a half that parents have to go through the history of their child and their development right up until that point, right? So you have to show that history there. And then at the end of it, you'll have an interview with the psychologist, and they will go over their findings with you. And psych eds can be very, very big and overwhelming, and it was for me. And I still, like, to this day, I find them very overwhelming. And now I know why I get ADHD. It's too many pages, too many words. But at the end of it, they do break it down for you in short sound bites. So that was great. And she allowed me to go back and ask more questions. But she also said, I'm seeing some things here that are not typical ADHD traits. They are more in the autism realm. And I said, well, I'm seeing the same thing too, but, I'm kind of in it, and I don't know, like, am I just being, the parent, and I got these blinders on or whatever? And she's like, no, I really think I'm going to refer you to a child psychologist here at this clinic, and they can do the assessment during the summertime, which was another $1,500. And unfortunately, this child psychologist was not schooled in they were very much into the traditional sense of what autism used to look like. And so we did that assessment, and then we did speech pathology assessment as well. And because you had to do that if you're under 6 for an autism assessment. And the speech pathologist was like, yes, there's some huge red flags here. Even the psychologist was like, yes, we have some social issues. We have some odd, not your typical reciprocation and things like that, but he doesn't have autism. And that was very frustrating, because we knew by then he did. we were like, nah, he's checking off all the boxes, right? And the child psychologist was like, no, I don't agree with that. But he does have other things. He's got dysfluency, which is stuttering, and he also has social pragmatic communication disorder, which I really do not like that diagnosis, because to me that is autism. But
Yeah.
someone could argue with me on that one at a later date, but it was a new diagnosis in the DSM-5 that came about because they took out PDD and NOS and pulled it apart into, now I think it's called, I don't even remember, not specified or something like that, and then social pragmatic communication disorder. So they pulled it apart and did that. Whereas they really should have just been brought together and put under the umbrella of autism. But luckily, the DSM-5 acknowledges that you can now have ADHD and autism at the same time. Before that, you couldn't. I know, I'm blowing my mind. I'm blowing everyone's mind. Anyways, there's no short story to this long story. I can't break it down for you into small little chunks. I tried doing this history and writing it down, and I got up to 11 pages to grade 4. Needless to say, 3 years later, we finally got a Sunny Hill assessment for developmental coordination disorder. We got, other stuff and autism. So unfortunately, between all that, we had even more assessments happening, and people were like, "Oh, he's just borderline. He's just borderline." And all this time, he missed out on early therapies that would have helped him, give him the tools to thrive and to be his best self, right? And to this day, I really regret not pushing harder. And like you said, Cathy, if you knew now what I knew then, I would have done things very differently. That psychologist at the beginning who said he didn't have autism, I would have gone back and said, no, I want you to reassess, or I want another psychologist to look at the findings and to talk with the other psychologists that had already done a psych ed with him. So that is a point to be made to our families, is that if you do not find that the assessment is correct or it doesn't jive with other professionals, you need to go back and you need to ask for another professional to look it over, to reassess that. It's really important that we do this as families, and it's so tiring and it's so hard. But we have to do it. And if you can get an advocate or a peer to come with you and to help you navigate that, I highly recommend it. I found some really great people. Fast forward to my youngest child, who in kindergarten were having school refusal. I'm like, what? I don't understand. I didn't see any signs of anything until grade 1, when we had really big school refusal, and he wasn't even recognizing alphabet letters like A, B, C, and D. And Cathy, who I'd already known, I'd already been educated on these different things that it could be. We also have a family member who has dyslexia. I was like, nope, that's it. And I talked to the teacher and I said, what do you think? And they're like, well, you probably should. Teachers aren't really supposed to say, go get them assessed or anything like that, but they can, sort of work with you and say, okay, well, this is really they're really below their peers. You might want to get that looked at and stuff. And I said, okay, again, privileged. We were able to go get a psych ed done for my youngest that summer, and learning disability, and with suspected ADHD as well, which kind of blew my mind because his ADHD presents differently than my older son, so I didn't catch it until they said it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think. And so I was trying to count all the assessments we've done for both kids, and I honestly couldn't tell you. I think we're at 11 or 12 or something like that, and I have to go get some more to update. As you said, Cathy, update those assessments, because the last one that my eldest did was when he was 5.5. In the schools, all the way through, every year I ask, could you do a psych ed assessment? Can you do a psych ed assessment? And they look at me and they're like, yeah, we know you could pay it with extended medicals, so we're not going to put you on the list at all. But this is what they say instead. We don't think it's really necessary since he's doing well academically. I'm like, anyway, that's because I'm collaborating really well with the teachers. He has EA support. We've identified the environmental factors that need to change, the priority switches all the time. So true. Thank you, Cathy. She wrote that in there. Most school districts have limited number of psych eds, and schools have to choose who gets assessed in a year. Now, I like that point. What I don't like about that point is that schools are not transparent about how many assessments they do per year, how many they do per school, how many they've actually done, and who and how many are on the wait list.
A few of them do outright say that, I know Coquitlam does, they only do two per school per year.
That's what they say.
But I know that's what they say, but that, like, I
Right.
think somebody should probably do a
FOI requests.
FOI, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Yeah.
They tell you just about anything, like,
Yeah, anything.
Anything. When my daughter was in grade 1 and I was like, I'm going to get her assessed, or I did get her assessed. And the same principal that said, I'm going to basically not throw your psych ed in the garbage because this is a diagnosis from a PhD.
Totally.
I said to her, I said, will you give that assessment to one of your school psychologists? And it was like, I want to say it was before Easter. So April, March. Can you take that assessment and give it to one of your school psychologists and then come back to me and tell me that that kid doesn't need an IEP?
Yeah.
So she went, okay, like this. And then she phones me. She goes, they're all on holidays. I go, holidays for Easter? She goes, no,
Yep.
They're already gone for summer. I go, the entire district has not one psychologist in the entire district to look at a psych ed for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I said, well, okay. I said, don't just stay in our zone, go outside of our zone. So yeah, it came back, and the psychologist agreed with me that that my daughter could have an IEP, but they still didn't give it to me.
Yeah. Well, okay. I really need to make a really big point here for everybody. And when I was talking to Minister Whiteside the other day at the legislature for our day 0, we were talking about assessments. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm like, that's really something that really needs to be done. Early assessments, blah, blah, blah. What I really want people to understand here is that an assessment does not equal support. It does not equal an IEP. It does not even equal understanding of what that is. So there's more advocacy that has to happen. It's not like, oh, I got my assessment done. That's what I thought. I actually thought that, hey, we got our assessment done. We're good to go now. Not at all. That is not how that happens. It doesn't even matter how clear of a diagnosis you have. You still need to advocate and clarify the things that your child needs to be successful or to thrive in the school community, in the school environment. And I really want all the politicians to understand this. We can talk about early assessments all we want, but if we don't make sure that it's attached to supports, nothing's going to change at this point in time. We're going to be spending a lot of money on assessments, but if we don't get the support at the end of the day, it's not going to mean anything. Both of my kids, like my youngest, 3 diagnoses, there's no funding for him in the school district. He has assessments under his belt. He's got 3 very, very, very obvious things. He's got an LD designation, and that does not bring funding into the school district. So the schools and stuff like that have to try and help him out with these varying diagnoses, and I don't know how they're going to do that. So I think that's just, it's incredible to me that we can have all these diagnoses, all these assessments. Yes, we have 6 minutes left, and yet still not get funding for it, and then supports after that. So I've been really, really lucky. We have some amazing people on my youngest team. My eldest has a really great team. I've got him in a really great program to do this. And Cathy, I know you've actually had to pull her out and go into a private setting just to get her support. We had to pay $4,000 for a tutor for 1 year of tutoring for my youngest, to get him to the level of his peers. Like that's a lot of money out of pocket for families. That's us. I like, there's not too many people who can do that. And so we have these children who have these diagnoses and stuff like that, but they're not getting the support that they need to actually help with their diagnoses. And Cathy, like, how much money would you say that you've spent? Yeah, all of that can be claimed on taxes. It can be, but only if you have if you have the disability tax credit. You cannot do it under medical expenses if you don't have the disability tax credit. Is that correct, Cathy?
No, that's not correct.
Okay. Yeah. So could you clarify that?
So I have one child that has mild to moderate dyslexia, and I have one with absolute severe dyslexia. So all of the private schools, all of the tutoring, all of the computers, absolutely everything we've ever bought for either one of them, we've claimed as a medical expense. And you get 20% back. Even the psych-ed, you can get 20% back for that.
Okay. And so
even the school, so like Kenneth Gordon School, Fraser Academy, you have to have a letter from the school saying that they provide the right tutoring and accommodations to suit the disability.
Okay. But you don't have to qualify for the developmental for the DTC, for the disability tax credit first before you can do that down your taxes. Sorry, side note, everybody, but this is actually important information if you want to be able to do these things. Okay, interesting. Yeah. So how do you, like, because I always assumed that you had to have the DTC to be able to claim that. No. Interesting.
You need the psych-ed saying that. So even if you get a psych-ed and it doesn't come back with a learning disability, you can still claim it if a doctor recommended. So if you go and you say, I think my kid has a learning disability, I'm going to book a psych-ed. Like I knew with my youngest, I was convinced. So we booked the psych-ed. I think half of it was covered by our extended medical, and then we expensed the other half as a medical tax expense. Okay. My second son, or my son, was grade 7 when we finally took him for a psych-ed. We got really smart and did it in December and January. So extended medical covered the whole thing because we claimed December, January.
Okay.
And then for him, he'll never qualify for the disability tax credit. That's really hard to get. We did lots of tutoring for him, and we claimed all his tutoring as a medical tax expense.
Okay, we have a question here from Facebook Live. If there's time for questions, I would like to know if intervention can change outcomes for dyslexia, or if it's all about accommodation. Where could I learn about intervention if it exists? And we have to answer very briefly because we have 2 minutes left.
Yes, intervention should be done way before accommodations, but accommodations should be given early enough that the child feels comfortable at school. So I would give audiobooks starting in kindergarten if there's a suspected learning disability right away.
Yes. Yeah. An intervention is Orton Gillingham. It's what's the other one? There's different. Sorry?
Any type of structured literacy.
Structured literacy are good interventions. That's what our tutor used as well. And it was really, really wild and cool to see them develop that learning. Sometimes they won't. And that's something that needs to balance out, right, Cathy? Like it's a balance between, how far do we go with the interventions? Like, are we really like wanting to like cure this or something like that? It's not curable, but we can help with interventions and
at a better level. I kind of try to sometimes compare it to a physical disability. It's much more easy to compare it to that. So, if you have a child that has, let's say, bow legs or something like that, but it's impairing their walking or running, you want to, intervention is like physical therapy. You want to do it to a level where they can function properly or at a level where they can actually run or
where they feel comfortable
as far as
enough.
It's
that's
up to you personally. we obviously wanted to bring her up to a level that she would be able to function at her academic level too.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a mixture of intervention and accommodation, right? We need to know where that line, not line, because it moves and it flows
Yep.
throughout our lifetime.
I always tell parents to make your decisions
Uh,
yearly or half a year. Like make your intervention plans frequently, like every 6
That's right.
months. Sit down.
Relook at it. That's
Yeah.
right. I need to say goodbye to our ASL interpreter. Thank you so much for doing this for us. I really thank you for making this an accessible, alive teach-in for us. And thank you for coming. I don't know if we're going to be shutting down, but I'm saying goodbye to the ASL interpreter right now. And
yeah,
now
we are going to stop.
Okay,
because
great.
we're mindful of people's time, and I'm going to play a little video as an outro sort of thing. And if the two of you want to hang back and just mute yourselves, we can debrief briefly if you have time afterwards. Okay. So I'm staying off video because I'm not prepped for camera today. This is Tracy Humphreys here.
Yes.
You're hearing the non-video voice of, and of course my tech skills are as ever low, so give me a minute while I figure out.
So you can also, I just want to say where you can reach Cathy at Dyslexia BC, dyslexiabc.cm@gmail.com. Is that correct, Cathy? Yes. This is day 2 of our teach-ins, and so could join us again tomorrow at 12 to 1. Cathy's going to have some SELA webinar that's happening very shortly next week. So follow her at Dyslexia BC and get all that information, and BC at Access, of course, message us or come to our private Facebook page if you're a family in need, or post on the public page and stuff like that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you both for speaking. All right, and off here goes the video.